Now we're going to talk about things you can do post-glaze coat or in between coats if you want to. We're going to talk about wax. So we used wax at the beginning. We could use wax in between. If I had a piece that I had dipped fully, this is only dipped in clear, but you know, humor me. If I was going to wax out a design on this, I could. I'd need to let it dry completely, and then I could dip it again in a glaze. Now, the clear glaze isn't really going to work for double dips with other glazes. It moves a lot, so I don't recommend doing combinations with the clear. But if you were going to do it with the white or one of the other glazes doesn't move too much, then that's fine. So I would wax out a design on this, let it dry, and then could dip it again. Now again, you have to be incredibly diligent about getting all of that glaze off the wax before it goes into firing. You also need to note that whenever you're waxing designs, either on the bare clay or in between layers, if you wax, say you waxed a bunch of like triangles on this and the points came together but didn't quite meet, you can create what's called a river of glaze because you're funneling all the glaze that moves into a small area, and it can cause catastrophic results on the kiln shelves because all the running glaze gets focused into one small area, and it's really bad. So please be very mindful of the designs you pick with the glaze combination. So if you pick a glaze combination that can move, even if you don't go all the way down the form, if you create a river, it'll still run off the piece. So just keep that in mind. Other things you can do after glazing. We could use our underglaze after glazing. I can't guarantee the results on this on all glazes. We really should test it. I know it works fairly well with the white glaze because the white glaze doesn't move. The yellow and the pink glazes are the same base as the white glaze, so that would probably be good too. You don't want a huge thickness of glaze doing this. It can end up bubbling if you do too much. So really just one coat on top of glaze is just fine. And you know, you're going to have to be a pretty confident hand because you don't get second chances doing this. So have a good idea of what you want to do. You could draw with a pencil lightly on top of a glaze and then follow that. But if you wipe off the underglaze, then you're wiping off your glaze. So you'd sort of just be starting the whole process again. So what that'll do is that'll like sink into the glaze and become a part of it, and it'll be the glossiness of the white with the color of the blue underglaze. So that's an option. There's also the option of the washes again. So we used washes on bare clay, talked about putting glaze on top of a wash that's been wiped back. You can also use wash on top of glazes, which is what our test tiles show, is a wash on top of a glaze. If you do it in a glaze, on top of a glaze that moves, like the clear, the color's just going to move with it. So if I were to use this wash on, let's say, the rim of this piece to add some color to it, that color is going to move with the glaze. So it's kind of run down the side of the piece with the glaze. If I did it on the white, which I know is a glaze that does not move, it shouldn't move with the piece. I can draw some pretty detailed things with this wash, and it shouldn't move once this, once the liquid actually dries. It should look like that when it comes out of the kiln. So depending on what glaze you use, you're going to get different results. Also, putting it on a light glaze is going to show up way better than putting it on a darker glaze, right? And we have test tiles of that to show you what the difference might be or how a wash might change the look of a glaze for the better or maybe for the worse, depending on how you feel about it. So washes can be used post-glazing. And I think that's it for glazing. Trying to remember, you can use these things after glazing. Yes. Double, triple check before something goes on the cart to be glaze fired that the bottom is completely free of glaze. You've got enough of a clearance from the glaze to the bottom of the piece, and that anything else that has wax on it is wiped off. If I find pieces that have glaze on the bottom or are far too close to the edge for comfort, or I see that there is wax that hasn't been cleared of glaze, or a piece is peeling, I will put it on the oops shelf and you'll need to fix it before it can be fired.